The walls of Čachtice Castle stand cold and silent, their stones hardened by centuries of secrets buried beneath layers of history. Yet, if you listen closely, the walls whisper. Ancient whispers, the kind that curl like smoke in the air, slipping into the cracks of time. Secrets, long swallowed by history, still stir the shadows on winter night, echoes of a past so dark it threatens to claw its way into the present. Stand in the castle's tower, amidst the skeletal remains of what was once a proud structure, and you might catch the faint, acrid scent of iron mingling with decay. The ghostly perfume of death. It clings to the stone, the very air thick with a haunting presence. The year is 1610, and in the heart of this grim fortress, Countess Adriana Czerny, a woman of nobility, immerses herself in a bath so far removed from the purity of water, it could only be described as a grotesque mockery. The liquid, dark and viscous, steams in the damp cold of the dungeon air. It isn't water, it's something else entirely, something that stains more than skin. Her once flawless complexion, a hallmark of youthful beauty, now flickers beneath the candlelight, glowing an eerie crimson. The Countess stirs the bath, a basin filled with the blood of her latest victim, believing it will grant her immortality, youth, and the beauty she fears losing. But the girl whose blood fills the basin will never again see the sun rise. A mere servant, just 16, she lost her life for a minor offense, an accidental tug on the Countess's hair. A trivial mistake that cost her everything. But she is not alone in her fate. The name of Adriana Czerny would soon become synonymous with brutality, terror, and a reign of violence that surpassed the darkest nightmares of those unfortunate enough to live under her shadow. To truly understand the monster she became, we must first look into the woman behind the myth, the bloodlines that shaped her, and the world that allowed such a reign of terror to continue unchecked. If this story has piqued your curiosity, if you feel the need to peel back the layers of this dark history, to uncover its hidden truths, then don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Where are you from? It's fascinating to think that, despite the miles between us, we are united in our search for the forgotten and the forbidden. Let's unravel the shadows of the past together. Adriana Czerny's birth was the beginning of a legacy steeped in darkness, destined to leave a scar upon the annals of history. Born into one of Hungary's most fearsome and influential families, the Czernys, she was immersed in a world where power and cruelty flowed as naturally as blood through the veins of her ancestors. The Czerny name was known far and wide, not just for their military conquests, but for their brutal punishments, their iron-fisted control over the peasantry, and their shadowy involvement in dark rituals and witchcraft. To the common folk, the Czernys were not only feared, but loathed a family, whose influence was matched only by the terror they inspired. From the moment she could walk, Adriana was raised in the crucible of this power. Her world was one where life and death were matters of control, where cruelty was not an exception, but a way of life. Adriana's early years were shaped by the fierce temper of her uncle, a king known for his volatile and sadistic cruelty, a man whose rages were legendary. He believed that power was not to be wielded with restraint, but with unbridled force. His punishments were slow and agonizing, meant to break the will and spirit of anyone who dared to cross him. Her aunt, meanwhile, whispered tales of forbidden arts, of dark rituals and arcane herbs that could alter the very fabric of life and death. A woman rumored to be a sorceress, she taught Adriana not only the ways of noble life, but also the more dangerous secrets of the world. In her private chambers, Adriana learned the craft of poison, the art of healing that veered dangerously close to the occult, and the rituals that could summon power beyond the reach of any man. This was a world that celebrated not just strength, but the manipulation of forces unseen. At age 11, Adriana bore witness to an event that would crystallize her view of power and death. A peasant, convicted of stealing a mere handful of grain, was sentenced to death in the courtyard of Čachtice Castle. The punishment was no swift mercy. It was a slow, agonizing death by exposure. Stripped of his clothes, the man was left bound in the frigid cold, forced to endure the elements as his punishment. From her vantage point in the warmth of her family's tower, Adriana watched as the man's body betrayed him. His skin turned first blue, then purple, and finally black as the cold consumed him. His fingers cracked and fell away under the relentless grip of frostbite. Yet Adriana did not look away. It was in that moment, as the man's life was slowly and painfully extinguished, that Adriana understood the true nature of power, not in the act of giving life, but in the far darker art of taking it. She learned then that life, when held in one's hands, was something fragile, to be snuffed out at will. The sight of his suffering imprinted upon her mind, and it became clear to her that the slow extinguishing of a life, the deliberate and calculated taking of it, was the ultimate expression of control. By the time she was 15, Adriana had already accepted a role that would cement her place in history. She was betrothed to Ferenc Endasti, a renowned war commander known as the Black Knight, his name whispered in fear across the land. Ferenc was a man whose brutality in battle was only outdone by his cruelty towards captives. He had seen countless men torn apart in the chaos of war, and from his experiences, he had learned that pain could break a person faster than any sword. It was not just physical torture that interested him, but the mental submission of his victims. Ferenc knew that the human body could endure unimaginable pain, but it was the mind, the spirit, that truly broke first. Together, Adriana and Ferenc found a new way to explore power. Their marriage, a politically motivated union, quickly became a partnership in cruelty. In the hidden dungeons of Čachtice Castle, they experimented on those who displeased them: servants, villagers, anyone who was unfortunate enough to fall into their orbit. With iron rods, sharp blades, and twisted implements, they explored the limits of human endurance. Adriana, ever the quick learner, reveled in this newfound knowledge. She found that inflicting pain brought her a thrill unlike any other. It was an exhilaration that consumed her, making everything else, wealth, power, beauty, seem insignificant by comparison. The more pain she inflicted, the more powerful she felt. Their murders began as small, seemingly insignificant acts. A maidservant who made a mistake, perhaps a broken dish, perhaps a misunderstood word, was punished with death. A stable boy, whose insolence had gone unnoticed, found himself dead in the stables, the cause of his death quietly attributed to a rogue horse. But these were not accidents. They were carefully orchestrated, hidden beneath the veil of normalcy. Adriana was learning that the key to maintaining her power was not just in the ability to kill, but in the art of hiding it. As time went on, however, the deaths became more frequent, more deliberate, and more gruesome. Then, in 1604, Ferenc Endasti passed away, officially, from illness. But those who had witnessed the growing darkness in their marriage whispered that Ferenc had perhaps grown uncomfortable with his wife's increasingly brutal desires. No matter the cause, Adriana was left with the reins of her empire. She inherited not only the vast estates and wealth, but the power to rule without restraint, free from the check of a husband's influence. Now, with no one to oppose her, Adriana could indulge her darkest desires. Her transformation from a young woman raised in a world of cruelty to the sadistic Countess of Čachtice Castle was complete. She was no longer just a product of her bloodline. She was its terrifying continuation. The brutality of her past, the lessons learned at the hands of those who raised her, and the quiet thrill she had discovered in the slow extinction of life all led to a single conclusion. Adriana Černý would reign without mercy, and no one, no matter their rank, no matter their innocence, would be safe. Her legacy, however, would not be written in grand battles or noble triumphs. It would be written in the blood of countless victims, in the chambers of Čachtice Castle, where the cries of the lost would echo through the centuries, waiting to be uncovered by those who dared to search for the truth. Adriana Černis. Obsession with youth and beauty began as a fleeting illusion, but quickly spiraled into madness. It started with a single, violent act. A servant girl, no older than 16, accidentally tugged at Adriana's hair. In a fit of rage, the Countess struck the girl, and blood sprayed across her hand. As she wiped the blood away, something caught her eye. Something unexplainable. The skin where the blood had touched seemed smoother, almost younger. Was it the blood or a mere illusion? Adriana wasn't sure, but in that moment, her path was sealed. The taste of this imagined rejuvenation ignited an obsession. Adriana became convinced that the blood of young women could reverse the ravages of time, stop the aging process, and grant her immortality. This grotesque belief set her on a dark journey, and the murders that had once been sporadic now became deliberate. Adriana sought blood, not just for the thrill of taking life, but as part of an increasingly twisted ritual. She began luring young women into Čachtice Castle with false promises of employment or education. These girls, unsuspecting, would soon become nothing more than vessels for her dark experiments. Adriana believed their blood pure, fresh, and full of life was the key to preserving her beauty, a beauty that slipped further away with each passing year. The rituals were horrifying. Adriana did not simply kill her victims, she made them suffer. She believed the more pain they endured, the stronger and more potent their blood would be. The girls were suspended from the ceilings of the cold stone chambers, their bodies slowly drained as Adriana watched, reveling in the agony of each moment. Her accomplices, Dorothea, Janos, and Ilona were complicit in these acts, and together they turned Čachtice Castle into a house of horrors. Dorothea, a confidant and rumored witch, provided advice on potions and rituals. Janos, a loyal executioner, assisted in the more physical aspects of the torture. Ilona, ever the facilitator, procured the victims, luring them from villages with promises of better work or a new life. As Adriana's obsession grew, so too did her brutality. The blood of young peasant girls no longer sufficed. She turned to the nobility, believing their blood would be purer, more potent, and ultimately more effective in preserving her youth. These noble victims, however, would prove to be her undoing. Unlike the peasants, the noble families had the means and the power to investigate the disappearances of their daughters. Adriana's hidden world of torture and murder could no longer remain a secret. Soon, whispers began to circulate among the noble families. Girls who had been sent to Čachtice Castle never returned, and no explanation was ever given. The victims' families, desperate for answers, began to question their daughters' sudden disappearances. The powerful families who had sent them there had resources, and they began investigating. Adriana's twisted empire, built on fear and secrecy, was beginning to crumble. Her noble status had once protected her, allowing her to indulge in her dark rituals without consequence. But now, it worked against her. The very people who had allowed her to operate above reproach were now the ones hunting her down. The walls of Čachtice Castle, which had long kept Adriana's dark deeds hidden, began to echo with rumors of her crimes. The same power that had enabled her reign of terror would soon bring about her fall. Adriana's descent into madness was complete. Her obsession with eternal youth had transformed her from a woman of noble birth into a sadistic killer whose only desire was to preserve a beauty that could not last. What began as a fleeting moment of rage had turned into a consuming need for power, control, and immortality. In the process, she had become the very monster she once feared. Her desire to be ageless, to outrun time itself, had stripped her of her humanity. The more blood she spilled, the more she lost of herself. And now, as her actions began to catch up with her, the world that had allowed her to commit these atrocities was finally taking notice. Adriana Chernus' name, once whispered in awe for her beauty and power, would soon be remembered for something far darker. A cruel, bloodthirsty woman who believed herself beyond the reach of death, only to fall victim to the very same forces she had tried to control. The reckoning was near, and it would come not from the powerless peasants she had tormented, but from the very nobles whose blood she had sought to preserve her own. By 1609, rumors surrounding Czerny Castle had reached a boiling point. Noble families began to notice the strange disappearances of their daughters, who had been invited to stay with Adriana under the guise of learning or seeking refuge. The first noble victim to draw attention was Adriana's cousin, Anna, who had come to the castle to refine her manners. After months of silence, Anna's parents received letters, but something felt off. When they visited the castle to inquire about their daughter, they were met with evasions and lies. Adriana claimed that Anna had left the castle on her own, perhaps to elope. But it was Anna's mother who uncovered the truth. During her visit, she noticed something unmistakable, the distinctive necklace that had belonged to Anna, now worn by Adriana. It was a small detail, but it shattered Adriana's careful web of deception. The necklace was proof that Anna had never left the castle. This discovery marked the beginning of Adriana's unraveling. An investigation was launched, but for months, Adriana continued her horrific rituals, unaware that the net was tightening around her. Witnesses emerged, servants who had escaped, peasants who had stumbled upon body parts, and local officials who had taken bribes to keep silent. The evidence that had long been hidden was now coming to light. In December 1610, the authorities, armed with a royal warrant, raided Czerny Castle. What they found inside was beyond the imagination of even the most hardened men. Rooms soaked in blood, dismembered bodies scattered across the stone floors, and implements of torture lying in the corners. But the most chilling discovery was a large silver tub filled with blood, still warm, with pieces of human remains floating within it. Adriana herself was found near the tub, her hands and face stained with blood. Her once radiant beauty had been replaced with a hollow, blood-soaked shell, her obsession with immortality, and youth now apparent in every grotesque detail. The evidence was irrefutable, but Adriana's noble status shielded her from public execution. Instead of facing the gallows, she was sentenced to life imprisonment, a fate far crueler than death. Her high birth and powerful connections protected her from the justice she deserved, and she was walled up alive in Czerny Castle. She was confined to the small set of rooms, with only a narrow slit in the wall for food and water. The once feared countess would never again see the light of day. Her accomplices Dorothea, Janos, and Ilona were not granted such protection. They were swiftly executed for their roles in the atrocities. But Adriana, left alone in her small, dark prison, would live out her remaining years in isolation. The end of Adriana's reign of terror was a fitting reflection of her twisted life. A woman who had once wielded absolute power, whose beauty and wealth had shielded her from the consequences of her actions, was now reduced to a forgotten relic in the dark corners of Czerny Castle. Her descent into madness, driven by her obsession with immortality, had cost her everything. Adriana Chernus' story serves as a haunting reminder of the dangers of unchecked power and the corrupting nature of obsession. Her pursuit of eternal youth led her to become a monster, driven by a belief that she could control life and death itself. Yet, in the end, it was this very obsession that destroyed her. Left to die alone in a dark cell, Adriana had nothing but the weight of her own actions to keep her company. In her final years, she was forced to confront the blood she had spilled, not just the lives of her victims. but her own humanity. The very thing she sought to preserve, the beauty of her youth, was gone. It had been consumed by her greed, her cruelty, and her refusal to accept the inevitability of aging. Her story asks us a powerful question. What price are we willing to pay for the illusion of immortality? Adriana Czerny sought eternal youth, and in doing so, lost everything that made her human. The pursuit of beauty and power consumed her, leaving nothing behind but a dark legacy of pain, blood, and madness. So there you have it, the chilling, tragic story of Elizabeth Báthory, a woman whose name has become synonymous with unimaginable cruelty, but also a complex figure shaped by a brutal era and a family history steeped in darkness. It's a disturbing tale, but one that forces us to confront the dark potential that can reside within us all, and the importance of holding power accountable. What are your thoughts on the Blood Countess? Did anything in particular surprise or disturb you? I'd love to hear your perspectives, so please leave a comment down below. Ask a question, share your own insights, or just let us know what resonated with you. Let's start a conversation about this fascinating and horrifying chapter of history. And if you enjoyed this exploration of the shadows of the past, please consider subscribing to the channel. That way, you won't miss any future chilling chronicles. Just hit that subscribe button, and you'll be notified whenever we upload a new video. But the story doesn't end here. There's so much more to unpack, so many more secrets buried within the walls of Čachtice Castle. Be sure to watch part 2, where we'll delve even deeper into the aftermath of Elizabeth's crimes, the lasting impact of her reign of terror, and the enduring legends that continue to swirl around the Blood Countess to this day. See you there.